And action! Okay. Action! There is only one fault, but I'm not certain they can do it any better. They very aware of the camera. We got it.
Okay, you're rolling. You know that?
No, I didn't, but
Okay, I don't have power to stop it.
okay. Take 3, let's take.
We're in pause.
No, we're rolling.
Okay.
Yeah, you're rolling correct.
extra company right now. Been with them 21 years.
How old were you when you first started working in the mills?
I was 27 years old. And I worked in the office, although later I went to a plant and I was a manager of a production area as well as a controller.
One of the reasons I wanted you to talk with your kinsperson here is to see how similar your impressions of life in the mills were with what she remembers. So when you were growing up, what did people tell you it was like in the mills when they were growing up?
His dad was a grocer, but Leona worked in the mill.
But you heard stories all the time.
Yeah, I've always heard the stories, but the things I've heard are not the same experiences I've got now. Basically, our mills now are air conditioned. They're clean. I used to go through tours down here where once or twice every couple of years they would have a cracker day or something they called it, and we'd tour the plant, and it was dark. Our plants are well lit. It's all the difference in the world, and one of the big things is we don't run cotton or wool, which is a very messy, creates a lot of waste. We run polyesters and nylon, modern fibers. But our equipment, it looks like somebody's home down here and in all the old cotton mills. I know we've all heard the stories about how dirty it is and how hard the working condition, the heat and everything. And I just don't see that. And like I say, I've heard about them and I know it's true, but still, it's not true where I work.
What we're trying to find out is what caused this big explosion in 1934.
You mean the strike?
Yes. What do you think?
Roosevelt called it.
Roosevelt called the strike?
Yes, sir.
No, he was president when it was happened, but the strike was because people
He called
didn't.
national strike.
No, ma'am.
Okay. What did you say that caused the strike?
Working conditions. People weren't working. Their families were going hungry.
I never did go home.
Yeah. Well, the wages were bad, but if people were working, they would still been okay. But they were working, a day a week maybe. Sometimes they weren't getting that much time.
So
but now that is before I was born. The only thing I know about it is the stories I've heard, but I've also read the history of it.
Now, where did you read the history of it?
Well, I study history. I study textiles in the early days. We have a very extensive library in our company, and I check out books. My uncle has told me an awful lot about the mills. Aunt May and Aunt Lo worked 50 years each in a spinning room.
Worked 49 years, 1 month, 10 years.
We're going to credit you with 50. But my mother worked there for a while, but she didn't work long.
So the history of the strike and the history of those conditions has been well known in this community.
By the older people now.
Leona was working.
Yeah, well, she was working back then.
Mm-hmm.
But she didn't work like you and Aunt Lo did for 50 years.
No, but she worked after Charles was a baby.
But I would dare say that if you talk to 100 people my age, you may find 2 that even know about it. It'd be that few. They've had to been around the people who were there, and people now, nobody knows anything about history. You know that if you've been talking to people. The people who know about it were there. Nobody studies anymore.
Do you think that there's been an avoidance of the facts?
I don't really think there's been an avoidance. I think it's just a normal. It's like World War II. You take anybody now under 40, they don't know anything about World War II except the John Wayne movies. They don't really understand what happened. And I don't want to say
Well,
they don't
people
care,
keep-
but they don't know.
They go on about the working conditions. I was talking to Judy a while ago. We didn't, our prices wasn't like the, I mean, we always had plenty to eat. Papa always had beeves, cows, hogs. Always had a big garden. And there's 11 of us, but we never did go hungry for nothing.
Eddie Mae, one of the things that I still can't get hold of is why we're getting such a different picture of the situation here from so many different people. Why do you think that's true?
I don't know.
Could you tell us what your version of the strike was?
Well, I was with the rest of them. And I was one of them that went to Atlanta to the Army too. But this woman across the road, Rachel Smith, told me today, y'all better not say anything to Moselle, not Moselle, what is it? Olivia Creamer, her sister, because said they didn't like for nobody to mention it. Well, I don't care for telling. We didn't know where we were going, but we went up there trying to get the people to come out. That's what Roosevelt wanted people to do, was to organize. We wasn't doing nothing but complying to his wishes. Trying to.
Do you remember a man named Homer Welch?
Sure.
Tell me about Homer Welch.
They accused him of having a pistol in Union, but he did not. Homer was a good person. Him and Leona spent what they had saved trying to keep the Union together. And he went through a lot, but he did not have a pistol.
Was he on the truck with you?
Homer didn't go. I mean, he was in the crowd, but he wasn't put on the truck. I don't know just how many men from Hogan's, but now Papa did not have to go. He just got on there anyway, because I was on there.
He wasn't going to let you go by yourself, even if it's to jail.
Why do you think that he insisted on going?
Well, for one thing, I think Papa joined the Union, but why don't you check on them people that come up here and organize? I told Leona, I said he can find other people. He found that letter Papa wrote to Roosevelt and found that one he wrote to Eugene Talmadge. Maybe you could find out the two men that organized here.
That's exactly what we were trying to find out. And we were talking to Harry Barton today. What part did Harry Barton play?
Well, he worked in the card room. And I don't know who promised him a better job. But if he'd come down here to the old mill and get them people out from in front of the mill, he'd get a better job. He got a better job. He got an office job. Harry didn't tell you that.
Did have you heard that story?
Yes.
Could you tell it the way you heard it?
But now Harry wasn't the
I
only
can tell
one.
it just like she told it.
Okay.
Harry, can't think of his name. Well thought of. He's secretary to the Union, and he did the same thing. Lester, what's his name? Mr. Lester's son. what?
Ed Lester?
Well, now,
He
how
got
did
a
you
better
hear?
job.
What's the story you heard?
Tony, I've heard all these stories a bunch of times, but never in any more detail than what Aunt May told. See, I've heard them in the last 20 years. Or before that, if I heard them, they didn't register. But it's not a subject that we've ever talked about a whole lot, is it, Aunt May? It comes up, so we laugh about it. I mean, Aunt May getting arrested is one of the funniest things I've ever heard in my life. I mean, this lady.
They didn't know where they didn't none of them little boys that's on that truck know where we was going.
Didn't know why you was on that truck, did you?
And they didn't know, I mean, when we got up there, they didn't have nowhere for us to stay except that barn. They moved 2 cars out and a truck, or tractor, and that's where they sent the cots down from the army for us to sleep. I had on Leon's plastic coat, and I slept in the coat that night and rubbed the blister on my arm.
Well, what was the? I know that there's been some stories around. You were telling me. Tell me the story about Harry Barton, because it's a little difficult for her to understand.
I just have told
No, I'm just asking him to tell it.
That's how he got into management. He was with the strikers until they asked him to be a strike breaker, is what it was. Talk a pickets into going home, which he did. And that's the story I've always heard. Now I understand he told that different. Which
Now, Harry
people
was a good neighbor, but they didn't live by us then. But after that, they moved second house down here. And he and his wife and family, good neighbors.
Now, people have stressed, we were talking over at East Noonan last night with 3 generations, and they were stressing how it split churches and families and everybody apart for a while.
It did.
Could you talk about that to Eddie Mae?
Well, Mr. and Ms. McCurry down here were good neighbors. But they didn't want to have nothing to do with us after we joined the union. Grandpa and Grandma Johnson across the street were good neighbors. But Mr. Johnson sit up at night and watch this house. He told Mr. Andrews one night, Mr. Andrews come from work and he walked out on the porch. He said, you know, they're still having union meetings over there at the Zimmermans. Mr. Andrews said, well, it's their business. But we never had a union meeting here at all. I didn't do anything I was ashamed of. I'm still not ashamed of.
Another thing that people who watched that footage of the strikers being carted off, they want to know where you got the courage to come out.
What you mean, come out?
Go out and protest.
I was just with the others. We was down here in front of the mill. Leon had been in a bunch, but Leon can't go nowhere without her breakfast. I went off without my breakfast. We got down there and this truck come from LaGrange. And I didn't know but one person on it. But there was women, boys, there's women, boys, and men. And they were going to Union. They asked us to go and we went with them. There's one boy on the truck that he was lots younger than I am, but his name was Travis Sweatman. And he said, I know you, but I bet you don't know me. But I did know him. His daddy got his arm cut off in the mill, and he had a certificate hanging on his wall where he'd always have a job in Young Mill. That's what he got arm getting cut off.
Well, you represented several 100,000 textile workers in the South who all of a sudden decided that they were going to form a union. And that's the thing that we're trying to get.
How's that?
Did you realize that you represented several 100,000?
Sure did.
Did you know that a lot of other people were coming out?
No, sir.
You didn't read the papers?
I guess I did, but I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, did you?
I think 8 May felt like